Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Apni Pathshala. As I have told you already earlier that after completing the first chapter of your history book, I will come to the first chapter of your political science book. So I hope there is no problem regarding the first chapter of history, as I have also provided the question answers link, and that is from Learn Cbse and Byju's. So if you are having any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section or you can mail me in my personal email. So let's start. Chapter 1, what is democracy? Why democracy? What is democracy? What are its features? This chapter builds on a simple definition of democracy. Step by step, we work out the meaning of the terms involved in this definition. The aim here is to understand clearly the bare minimum features of democratic form of government. After going through this chapter, we should be able to distinguish a democratic form of government from a non-democratic form government. Towards the end of this chapter, we step beyond this minimal objective and introduce a broader idea of democracy. Democracy is the most prevalent form of government in the world today, and it is expanding to more countries. But why is it so? What makes it better than other forms of government? That is the second big question that we take up in this chapter. So, the chapter name is why. What is democracy? Why is democracy? So, in the earlier classes, we all have learned uh, we all are given small informations about democracy, but in this chapter we will start to learn in detail that why democracy is actually needed, or what are its aim, what are the bare minimum features of a democratic form of government, and how is it different from a non-democratic form of governments, what are the parts, or you can say what are the advantages of people, because we know that democracy is of the people, for the people, by the people. So people are the most important because they actually choose their representatives in a democratic form of government, and those representatives work for the people. So, why democracy is always a better option or a better form of government from other forms of government is a big question, and we will crack this big question in this chapter only. So, let's start. What is democracy? You have already read about different forms of government on the basis of your understanding of democracy. So far, mentioning a few examples, write down some common features of democratic governments, non-democratic governments. So you can do it by your own. That you can if you want to distinguish between democratic and non-democratic governments, then you must write the different kinds of features of both of them and compare with each other. You can okay, I will share this difference with you, that what are the difference between the features. I will share it. Why define democracy? Before we proceed further, let us first take note of an objection by Mary. She does not like this way of defining democracy and wants to ask some basic questions. Her teacher, Matilda Lindo, responds to her questions as other classmates join the discussion. So, why define democracy? So, before defining democracy, we will take a note of a little bit of conversation between a student whose name is Mary, and that she is asking questions to her teacher, that her name is Matilda Lingo, and other classmates also joined the discussion. So, let us see. Mary: Ma'am, I don't like this idea. First we spend time discussing democracy and then we want to find out meaning of democracy. I mean, logically, should not we have approached it the other way round? Should not the meaning have come first and then the example? Linked, madam. I can see your point, but that is not how we reason in everyday life. We use words like pain, rain, or love. Do we wait to have a definition of these words before we use them? Come to think of it, do we have a clear definition of these words? It is only by using a word that we understand its meaning. So, basically, when we use a word, like if we are saying road, then in our brain, after saying road, the image of road is actually means it is coming automatically, like road is like a long straight way where white marks are given and which is very smooth to go on. So we don't need this kind of definition of a road to make an image in our brain. After getting to know the name, we can create the image automatically in our brain. So democracy is like that. If we hear the name of if we hear the term democracy, we can already tell that it is a form of government. Democracy is a form of government which where people are the most important, means where the citizens of a country are the foremost and most important part for the government. But then why do we need definitions at all? We need a madam, we need a definition only when we come across a difficulty in the use of a word. We need a definition of rain only when we wish to distinguish it from, say, drizzle or cloudburst. The same is true for democracy. We need a clear definition only because people use it for different purposes, because different kinds of governments call themselves democracy. Ribyang. But why do we need to work on a definition? The other way you quoted Abraham Lincoln to us, democracy is government of the people, by the people and for the people. This is the actual meaning of democracy, so everyone should remember this. When in Meghalaya always ruled ourselves, that is accepted by everyone. Why do we need to change that? So Mary is asking to her madam that why do we need definitions. So her madam is saying that we need definitions because when we come across different kinds of words, like if we take rain, then if we want to differentiate with others like drizzle or cloudburst, then we need a definition of rain. Otherwise, if we imagine rain in our brain, then we can see that from sky the water is coming, we can say that it is rain, we can always say that. But drizzle and cloudburst are different. So because of differentiating these things, we need definitions. That is why there are different kinds of forms of governments where people are also involved. But in democracy, the total procedure, like the government making, choosing representatives, laws making, etc., all are done by the people. So people is the most important factor. But in every government this does not happen, because there are some specific governments also where people are involved as well as the army, or dictatorships are there, autonomy is there, monarchy is there, where the role of people is just a mere thing, not so important. So Ribyang is also saying that why do we need to work on definition? Because Abraham Lincoln already said that democracy is government of the people, by the people and for the people. So when in Meghalaya they rule themselves, that is accepted by everyone. So why should we change that? So madam is saying that Lincoln madam is saying that I am not saying we need to change it. I too find this definition very beautiful. But we don't know if this is the best way of defining unless we think about it ourselves. We must not accept something just because it is famous, just because everyone accepts it. So if we find something like think, if all I am giving my stage of example, like all are doing the same course but I have chosen different, so that doesn't affect me, because they are choosing their what everyone is choosing, that cannot be always right. Everyone has different paths and all have to work on that path only, because we are people of different mindsets. So in definitions also, if it is looking beautiful, that doesn't mean it is accurate and it is correct. We should know the core meaning and then we should accept it through all the means and rules. Yolanda: ma'am, can I suggest something? We don't need to look for any definition. I read somewhere that word democracy comes from a Greek word demokratia. In Greek, demos means people and kratia means rule. So you can you have to remember this, that democracy has come from a Greek word that is demokratia. In Greek, demos means people and kratia means rule. So democracy is ruled by the people. This is the correct meaning. Where is the need to debate? So Yolanda has given Yolanda has said we do not need any definition, because she has read somewhere that the word democracy comes from a Greek word demokratia, and in Greek demos means people and kratia means rule. So there is no need. So actually democracy is ruled by the people. So this is the correct meaning, and there is no point of debate. Lindo madam, that is also a very helpful way of thinking about this matter. I would just say that this does not always work. A word does not remain tied to its origin. Just think of computers. Originally they were used for computing, that is to say, calculating very difficult mathematical sums. These were very powerful calculators, but nowadays very few people use computers for computing sums. They use it for writing, for designing, for listening to music, for watching films. Words remain the same, but their meaning can change with time. In that case, it is not very useful to look at the origins of the word. So the madam has given very clear cut example that the meanings of the words can change with time. So previously, when people generally used computers, they use it for calculating very difficult mathematical sums, because they are very powerful calculators. But nowadays people use computers for not only for computing sums, but for writing, designing, listening to music, and watching films. So the meanings of word can change by their time. So the origin of the word is not so very important to remain same throughout the years. Mary, ma'am, so basically what you are saying is that there is no shortcut to our thinking about the matter ourselves. We have to think its meaning and evolve a definition. Lindo madam, you got me right. Let us get on with it now. So Mary has understood the concept of Lindo madam, that there is no shortcut of our thinking, like we are taking origin, we are taking some quotes, etc., etc. There are no shortcuts. We have to understand the meaning about the word, and we have to evolve a definition on our own. This is actually what learning is. If a word is given to you, you can take the word and think about it and make a definition of own. You don't have to match it with others' meanings. So in political science this happens, because if you have got an example in a positive way, someone can get it also in a negative way, and also someone can get it in a neutral way. So it is very important that what are your origins, means not what are your origins, but it is very important that the way of thinking, if you are thinking it that way, then it is happening. If you are not thinking it that way, then it is not happening, because situations are actually created by people. So that is the most important thing in political science, is the situations are created by people, and if people are having problem, then they can change it by their own, but it takes time. A simple definition. Let us get back to our discussion on similarities and differences among governments that are called democracies. One simple factor common to all democracies is the government is chosen by the people. We could thus start with a simple definition. Democracy is a form of government in which rulers are elected by the people. This is a useful starting point. This definition allows us to separate democracy from forms of government that are clearly not democratic. The army rulers of Myanmar were not elected by the people. Those who happened to be in control of the army became the rulers of the country. People had no say in this decision. Dictators like Pinochet are not elected by the people. This also applies to monarchies. The kings of Saudi Arabia, not because the people have chosen them to do so, but because they happen to be born into the royal family. This simple definition is not adequate. It reminds us that democracy is people's rule. But if we use this definition in an unthinking manner, we would end up calling almost every government that holds an election a democracy. That would be very misleading. As we shall find out in chapter 3, every government in contemporary world wants to be called a democracy, even if it is not so. That is why we need to carefully distinguish between a government that is democracy and one day that pretends to be one. We can do so by understanding each word in this definition carefully and spelling out the features of a democratic government. So, we can start with a simple definition that democracy is a form of government where the rulers are elected by the people. This is very useful starting point because in a democratic form of government, as I told earlier, people are the most important. So, the definition allows us to separate democracy from all forms of government that are clearly not democratic, because here people's opinions are the most important. The army rulers of Myanmar were actually not elected by people. So those who happened to be in control of the army became the rulers of the country, and people had no say in this decision, because it is a autocratic kind of government, because army is controlling the situation, and those who are in favor of army, they are getting the chance of becoming the rulers, and those rulers are not actually respecting the opinions of people. So people will not if opinions of people are not getting so much valued or respect, then there is no point of democracy. The dictators of Pinochet are not elected by the people. They applied monarchies. The kings of Saudi Arabia also were not elected by the people, but they got the position or the powers of ruler because they born into an royal family. So the definition is not adequate. It also reminds us that democracy is actually people's rule. But if we think the definition in a different way, we would end up calling every government that holds an election is a democracy. Yes, we can say that, because if government is holding election, we can say it a democracy. But we cannot say it a democracy. Here's the point. Because they are holding elections, but if people are not happy with the conditions or with the procedure of election, then we cannot say it as a democracy, because elections can happen and votes can also be taken away. The voting rights can also be taken away by hiding from the media. So people are not going to give the vote, and the parties are actually giving the vote. So this, we cannot say that all forms of government are actually democracy. That is why we need to carefully distinguish between a government that is democracy and one that pretends to be a democracy. So we should carefully understand all the words that are present in the definition of a democracy and who actually applies it. We should also say that is the democratic government. The cartoon was drawn when elections were held in Iraq with the presence of US and other foreign powers. What do you think the cartoon is saying? Why is democracy written the way it is? Because they are trying to establish the democracy, and M stands for monarchy, and they want to abolish that. Features of democracy. We have started with a simple definition. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. This raises many questions. Who are the rulers in this definition? Which officials must be elected for any government to be called a democracy? Which decisions may be taken by non-elected officials in a democracy? What kind of election constitutes a democratic election? What conditions must be fulfilled for an election to be considered democratic? Who are the people who can elect the rulers or get elected as rulers? Should this include every citizen on equal basis? Can a democracy deny some citizens this right? Finally, what kind of a form of government is democracy? Can elected rulers do whatever they want in democracy, or must a democratic government function with some limits? Is it necessary for a democracy to respect some rights of the citizen? Let us consider each of these questions with the help of some examples. So, as we have read earlier that democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. So, there are many questions that are raised from this opinion, like who are the rulers in this definition, which officials must be elected of for any government to be called a democracy, which decisions may be taken by non-elected officials in a democracy, what kind of election constitutes a democratic election, what conditions must be fulfilled for an election to be considered democratic, and who are the people who can elect the rulers to get elected or get elected as rulers. Should this include every citizen on an equal basis? Can a democracy deny some citizens this right? Finally, what kind of a form of government is democracy? Can elected rulers do whatever they want in a democracy, or must a democratic government function with some limits? Is it necessary for a democracy to respect some rights of the citizens? So we can see that there are many questions, but we will try to find most of the answers within this chapter. So, major decisions by elected leaders. In Pakistan, General Parvez Musharraf led a military coup in October 1999. He overthrew a democratically elected government and declared himself the chief executive of the country. Later, he changed his designation to president and in 2002 held a referendum in the country that granted him a 5-year extension. Pakistani media, human rights organizations, and democracy activists said that the referendum based on malpractices and fraud. In August 2002, he issued a legal framework order that amended the Constitution of Pakistan. According to this order, the president can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. The work of the civilian cabinet is supervised by a National Security Council, which is dominated by military officers. After passing this law, elections were held to the national and provincial assemblies. So Pakistan has had elections, elected representatives have some powers, but the final power rested with military officers and General Musharraf himself. Clearly, there are many reasons why Pakistan under General Musharraf should not be called a democracy, but let us focus on one of these. Can we say that the rulers are elected by the people in Pakistan? Not quite. People may have elected their representatives to the national and provincial assemblies, but those elected representatives were not really the rulers. They cannot take the final decisions. The power to make final decisions rested with army officials and with General Musharraf, and none of them were elected by the people. This happens in many dictatorships and monarchies. They formally have an elected parliament and government, but the real power is with those who are not elected. In a few countries, the real power was with some external powers and not with locally elected representatives. This cannot be called people's rule. This gives us the first feature. In a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. So here we got our first feature of democracy, that is in a democracy the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. So what was the topic? Major decisions by elected leaders. So in Pakistan, General Musharraf led a military coup in the year 1999 in October month. He overthrew the democratically elected government, and he himself declared that he is the chief executive of the country. Later on, he changed his designation to president, and in 2002 he held a referendum in the country that actually guaranteed 5 years extension. Means he actually granted himself 5 years extension to his position. So Pakistani media, human rights organization, and different democracy activists said that the referendum was actually based on malpractices. Yes, obviously, because he has gained the position by power, by terror. So it is actually done with malpractices and fraud. So in August 2022, he issued a legal framework order that amended the Constitution of Pakistan. So in August 2022, he issued a legal framework order that actually amended a part of the Pakistan Constitution, and according to this order, the president can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. Think how much power he took. Like, he took how much power for himself only, that the president can himself dismiss national and provincial assemblies. Like, think, means if suppose if people choose different representatives other than General Musharraf, then he has the power to dismiss both the national and provincial assemblies and take power all by himself. He is very clever. Actually, in Pakistan, this kind of malpractices and frauds are going on from many days, and now also these kind of things are going on, but like those are not actually captured, and media is not so, like, these things are actually hidden, because if these things come to the point, then the government of Pakistan will be affected. So, and the media channels can be fired also, as we all know how much aggressive they are. So let it be with them. Let us gain some experience by their agendas and plannings. The work of the civilian cabinet is supervised by a National Security Council, which is dominated by military officers. So the civilian cabinet was actually supervised by a National Security Council, which is totally dominated by military officers, who are under General Musharraf. Means he has control over each and every sections of the whole country. And after passing that law, elections were held to the national and provincial assemblies. So Pakistan has had elections. Elected representatives also have the powers, but the final power only rested with the military officers and General Musharraf, because they can dismiss their national and provincial assemblies if they don't work under him. So they are actually frightened or scared that if these things happen, then we cannot actually grow on, like we may be fired or we may be killed in our own country by himself, and nobody will get to know that what happened to us. Like, this kind of terror is now also going on, but now it is lesser than that time. Clearly, there are many reasons that why Pakistan under General Musharraf should not be called a democracy. Yes, we cannot call it a democracy, because if the people are choosing a representatives and the elections are taking place in a free and fair way, and the elected representatives of people are getting power, then only we can say that it is a people's government. Otherwise, we cannot say it is a people's government, because they are having national and provincial level assemblies, and also elections are getting held, but the main power is resting over the hands of the military officers and General Musharraf. So they are actually the main rulers, and they have only the power to take final decisions. The power is upon the military officials. So this happens in many democracies and monarchies. Like, they are having elections in a free and fair way, but the people's representatives are not getting their actual power. So it is a kind of problem, and we cannot call this kind of government as a people's government, because the first feature we get from here is in a democracy the final decision making power must rest with those elected by people. So people's representatives will get the power to run the government in a democratic government. So free and fair electoral competition. In China, elections are regularly held after every 5 years for electing the country's parliament, called Guangguo Renmin Daibiao Dahui. Quite difficult name, but you must recall it. No need to memorize this, because we will only take the lesson from their experience. We will not memorize these kind of things, but you can remember this, that National People's Congress, that was the party. The National People's Congress has the power to appoint the president of the country. It has nearly 3,000 members elected from all over China. Some members are elected by the army. Before contesting elections, a candidate needs the approval of the Chinese Communist Party. Only those who are members of the Chinese Communist Party or 8 smaller parties allied to it were allowed to contest elections held in 2002 to 3. The government is always formed by the Communist Party. Since its independence in 1930, Mexico holds elections after every 6 years to elect its president. The country has never been under a military or dictator's rule, but until 2000, every election was won by a party called PRI, Institutional Revolutionary Party. Opposition parties did contest elections but never managed to win. The PRI was known to use many dirty tricks to win elections. All those who were employed in government offices had to attend its party meetings. Teachers of government schools used to force parents to vote for the PRI. Media largely ignored the activities of opposition political parties except to criticize them. Sometimes the polling booths were shifted from one place to another in the last minute, which made it difficult for people to cast their vote. The PRI spent a large sum of money in the campaign of his candidates. Should we consider the elections described above as an example of people electing their rulers? Reading these examples, we get a sense that we cannot. There are many problems here. In China, the elections do not offer the people any serious choice. They have to choose the ruling party and the candidates approved by it. Can we call this a choice? In the Mexican example, people seem to really have a choice, but in practice they had no choice. There was no way the ruling party could be defeated, even if people were against it. These are not fair elections. We can thus add a second feature to our understanding of a democracy. Holding election of any kind is not sufficient. The elections must offer a real choice between political alternatives, and it should be possible for people to use this choice to remove the existing rulers if they wish so. A democracy must be based on a free, fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. And we will read this more about in chapter 3. So, what was the situation in China? China also held elections regularly after every 5 years for electing the country's parliament, that is Guangguo Renmin Daibiao Dahui, or National People's Congress. The National People's Congress had the power to appoint the president of the country. As they are having the majority, so they have the power of appointing the president of the country. It has nearly 3,000 members from all over China. Then imagine the power they are getting from the public, like 3,000 members. Some members are elected by the army, and before some members you can see are elected from the army. And before contesting elections, a candidate needs to get the approval of the Chinese Communist Party. So before contesting any elections, they need to get an approval from the Chinese Communist Party. And those who are member of this party and 8 smaller parties which are allied to it are only allowed to participate in the elections that were held in 2002 2 to 3. So no other parties were given chance to stand in the elections and fight, because they have most number of representatives, so they took all the powers by themselves. And the 8 smaller parties which were allied to these Chinese Communist Party were given a chance. So the government is always formed by the Communist Party. Yes, they are taking it by their own power, so they will only form the government, right? No other parties are getting any chance, so how will they form the government? Since its independence in 1930, Mexico holds power after every 6 years to elect its president. The country has never been under a military or dictator's rule. So, since independence of Mexico in 1930, it holds elections after every 6 years to elect its president. So, the country has never seen in a dictator's or monarchy or a military rule. But until 2000, every election was won by a single party, that is Institutional Revolutionary Party. Opposition parties did not contest in the elections, but they never managed to win, because the PRI was well known to use dirty and cheap tricks to win the elections. All those who were employed in the government offices are actually forced to engage in party meetings, and the teachers of the government schools generally force the parents of the students to give votes to their parties. Media was largely ignored by the activities. Media largely ignored the activities of the opposition parties, because they always thought that if they support opposition parties, then they will also be tricked by PRI. So they always supported the PRI because they wanted to keep their positions alive. And sometimes they came to see that the polling booths were shifted from one place to another, and it made people difficult to cast their votes. So, and also the PRI spent a large sum of money in their election campaigns, which is actually not legal. I am telling it that this is actually not legal. It is also written in our constitution that spending a large sum of money in the campaign of candidates during election time is strictly prohibited, because many public resources and many public means are harmed against by this kind of things. So these things are illegal, but our politicians do this kind of things to gain majority and to spread policies which actually they will never meet. We all know that, but slogans are actually what politics is going on. Like, slogans are the most important. So if you don't give slogans, then you will not be able to win the elections. In class 12 we will read that because of the slogan Garibi Hatao Garibi Bachao, Indira Gandhi got most of the votes from different parts of the country. Because of that one slogan, she got most of the votes. Means, think about the poor section, that how they were tricked by this slogan. And after winning the elections, no work is done. So then people came to know that she is not actually working for the poor sections of the society, and this opened their eyes and they again elected other members. So slogans are one medium of gaining majority, but it is not the actual medium. You have to work for the people, because people are electing you to stand for them, to fight for them, to present their opinions among the to the government. But if you are not working, then it is not worth, because it has no worth. Because if you don't work for the people, then how we can call it as a people's government? So we cannot consider these examples that people are actually electing their rulers. We can only tell that in China the elections do not offer people any serious choices, because the same party again and again is coming over the rule and it is ruling, but people are not electing that party. but it is ruling because it has more power, it has more wealth. That's why it is coming to power and it is ruling. But people don't have any choice. People cannot actually make choices, and there are no choices left. If opposition parties stand against them, then they may be actually, you can say, they may be their identity may be removed from the whole country, maybe. Like these kind of dangerous things happen, we will see many examples later also. So we can thus add a second feature to our understanding of democracy, that holding elections of any kind is not sufficient. Obviously, elections are getting held, but if people's choices are not respected or not elected, then what is the matter of election? Election should be held in a free and fair way. That is, a democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. You have to remember this. A democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. Like they have actually a fair chance of losing, because every party should get a chance. But sometimes these things cannot get, means sometimes these things should not be happen, because we will see many examples later on. Like you will, if you take political science in class 11 and 12, in 12 you will get to know that how the Congress government from the core of India has actually destroyed India, like for many years. Means there it was a generation like Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, like how they destroyed and how they imposed all the rules and regulations by themselves. So you will get to know there that this that a free or fair election where those currently in power should not have fair chance of losing, because if power is getting on to wrong hands, then it is quite harmful and it might cause problems in future for the country. Next topic, one person, one vote, one value. Earlier we read about how the struggle for democracy was linked to the demand for universal adult franchise. This discipline has now come to be accepted almost all over the world. Yet there are many instances of denial of equal right to vote. Until 2015 in Saudi Arabia, women did not have the right to vote. So you can imagine, until 2015, Saudi Arabian women don't have any right to vote. So it was totally a backward country. Though India was also, but India gave the right to vote many years ago. But so in Saudi Arabia, we know that due to some proper reasons, the women were not given the right to vote. Estonia has made its citizenship rules in such a way that people belonging to Russian community find it difficult to get the right to vote. So in Estonia there was a citizenship rule where the people belonging to Russian community find a difficulty to get the right of voting. In Fiji, the electoral system is such that the vote of an indigenous Fiji has more value than that of an Indian Fijian. What kind of rules are these? In Fiji, the electoral system was in such a way that the indigenous peoples of Fiji has given vote, and their vote values more than the Indian Fijian. It's quite interesting, but what can we say? Like they have made so. Democracy is based on a fundamental principle of political equality that gives us the third feature of a democracy. In a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote and each vote must have one value. It is very important that each adult must have one vote and each vote must have one value. We will read more about this in chapter 3. So, rule of law and respect for rights. So we will continue this in the next video. So today up to this, I hope you all have understood the three features of democracy, and if you have any doubt, then you can ask me in the comment section, or you can mail me in my personal mail. So thank you. Bye.